The champagne hit Denise's face before she could react. Cold, stinging, humiliating. The blonde woman laughed, tossing her hair back. Oops, clumsy me. But you were leaving anyway, right? The staff entrance is that way. 300 guests watched. Nobody moved to help. Her own husband stood 5 feet away and pretended he didn't know her name. But they didn't know one thing. In exactly 7 minutes, that nobody was going to walk onto that stage and destroy every single person who laughed. This is that story. If you want to see satisfying karma, subscribe now and comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. Now, let me tell you how a black woman from Baltimore built $1 billion empire and how one champagne glass brought it all crashing down on the people who underestimated her. The grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria sparkled with the kind of wealth that most people only saw in movies. Denise Marie Washington stood near the service entrance, adjusting the hem of her simple navy blue dress. No diamonds, no designer labels. Her natural hair was pulled back in a low twist, practical and neat. Her grandmother's watch, a simple Timex with a worn leather band, was the only jewelry she wore. To anyone looking, she was invisible. Just another face in the background. Maybe a caterer who got lost. Maybe someone's assistant. She checked the time. 7:43 p.m. The keynote speech was in 17 minutes. Excuse me. The voice was sharp, entitled, the kind of voice that had never been told no. Denise turned around. The woman standing there looked like she had stepped off the cover of a magazine. Blonde hair cascading in perfect waves. Blue eyes framed by lash extensions. A gold Versace gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Denise knew exactly who she was. Amber Lee Beaumont. 26 years old. Instagram influencer. And for the past 2 years, the woman sleeping with Denise's husband. "Can I help you?" Denise asked. Her voice was calm, steady, but her heart was pounding against her ribs like it wanted to escape. Amber looked her up and down, slowly, deliberately. Her lip curled into a sneer. "My glass is empty." She thrust a crystal champagne flute toward Denise's chest. "I don't see a waiter anywhere. Go fetch me a refill. Vintage, not the cheap stuff they're giving everyone else." Denise stared at the glass, then up at Amber's eyes. "I don't work here, Miss Beaumont." Amber blinked. For a moment, genuine surprise flickered across her face. Then she laughed. It was a harsh, mocking sound that drew the attention of nearby guests. "Oh, please. You're standing by the kitchen doors. You're wearing that." She gestured vaguely at Denise's outfit. "And honestly, you kind of blend into the background. No offense." "None taken," Denise said quietly. "So, if you're not staff, then what? A +1 who got ditched?" Amber's eyes sparkled with cruel amusement. "Or wait, let me guess. You're here to network. Trying to meet some rich people who might throw you a bone?" A small crowd had begun to gather. Denise could feel their eyes on her, judging, assessing, finding her lacking. "I'm waiting for my husband," Denise said. "Husband?" Amber nearly choked on her laugh. "Honey, look around you. Men here bring wives who look like me, or they bring business partners in expensive suits. They don't bring—" She paused, tilting her head. "Well, whatever this is." The people around them chuckled. It was that particular laugh that wealthy crowds reserved for moments of casual cruelty. The kind of laugh that said they were all in on the same joke. And Denise was the punchline. "I'm going to give you some advice," Denise said, her voice dropping low. "Walk away now, before you embarrass yourself." Amber's eyes widened in theatrical disbelief. She turned to the crowd, arms spread wide. "Did you hear that? She's threatening me." She placed a hand over her heart in mock fear. "This woman, whoever she is, just told me I'm going to embarrass myself at my boyfriend's company gala." The laughter grew louder. "Your boyfriend's company," Denise repeated slowly. "That's right. Garrett Sterling, the CEO. Maybe you've heard of him? He's kind of a big deal." Amber smiled sweetly. "And I'm kind of the woman he comes home to." Something flickered in Denise's eyes. Pain, old and deep. The kind that had calcified into something harder over 14 years of marriage. "Oh, I know who Garrett Sterling is," Denise said. "Then you know you don't belong here." Amber stepped closer, invading Denise's space. Her perfume was expensive and suffocating. "Let me spell it out for you, since you seem confused. This party? It's for people who matter. People with money. People with connections. People who actually built something." She poked Denise in the chest with one manicured finger. "You? You look like you should be cleaning the bathrooms, or maybe serving appetizers. So why don't you do us all a favor and find wherever you actually belong?" "Amber," a man's voice cut through the tension, smooth, charming. The voice of someone who had spent 52 years getting whatever he wanted. The crowd parted, and Garrett Christopher Sterling III walked through like he owned the room, which, as far as anyone knew, he did. He was handsome, in that all-American way that graced magazine covers and investor brochures. Salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, blue eyes that crinkled when he smiled. A bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo that fit like a second skin. When he saw Amber, his face softened into a warm smile. When his eyes landed on Denise, the blood drained from his face. "What's going on here?" Garrett asked, his voice tight. "Baby!" Amber immediately latched onto his arm, pressing herself against him. "This woman is harassing me. I think she's crashing the party. She was lurking by the kitchen, and when I asked her to leave, she got aggressive." Garrett's jaw tightened. He looked at Denise. She looked back at him. 14 years of marriage. 14 years of building something together. 14 years of eating ramen noodles in a tiny apartment, while she wrote code and he made phone calls. "Garrett," Denise said softly, "tell her." A muscle twitched in his cheek. "Tell me what?" Amber looked between them, confused. "Baby, do you know this woman?" The crowd had grown. Denise could see board members in the front row, investors, tech journalists. Everyone who mattered in their industry was watching this moment unfold. Garrett made a calculation. She could see it happening behind his eyes. The quick assessment of risk versus reward. The weighing of options. The choice that would define everything. He chose wrong. "I've never seen this woman before in my life," Garrett said, loudly, clearly, making sure everyone could hear. The words hit Denise like a physical blow. She had known he was a cheater. She had known he was a liar. But to deny her existence entirely in front of everyone, after everything they had built together? Something inside her went very, very cold. "Garrett," she whispered, giving him one last chance. "Think very carefully about what you're doing right now." He stepped forward, his charming mask slipping into something ugly. "I don't know who you are or how you got in here, but you're disturbing my guests." He turned to the crowd, spreading his hands apologetically. "I'm so sorry about this, everyone. We clearly have a security issue." He snapped his fingers. "Security!" Two large men in black suits materialized from the crowd. Amber beamed with triumph. She looked at Denise with the satisfaction of someone who had just won a war. "See? I told you." "You're nothing," You're nobody. Garrett doesn't know you. This is his company, his party, his world. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried perfectly. And you don't belong in it. Amber, Denise said quietly, you should stop now. Or what? Amber laughed. What are you going to do? Call your lawyer? File a complaint? She looked Denise up and down again. Honey, people like you don't have lawyers. People like you clean the offices of people who have lawyers. Miss, one of the security guards put a hand on Denise's arm. You need to come with us. Take your hand off me, Denise said. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it now. Ma'am, we can do this the easy way or— The easy way, Denise interrupted, would be for you to check your employee database and find out whose name is on your paycheck. The guard hesitated, confused. Oh my God, Amber groaned. She's delusional. Just drag her out already. She's ruining my night. She grabbed a fresh glass of champagne from a passing waiter and took a sip, looking at Denise over the rim with pure contempt. You know what? I'm actually glad this happened. It's going to make such a great story. The night some random woman tried to crash Garrett's gala and pretended to know him. She laughed. Maybe you can sell it to the tabloids. Make enough money to buy yourself a real dress. Amber, Garrett said warningly. That's enough. Let security handle it. No, baby. I want her to understand something. Amber stepped right up to Denise, so close their faces were inches apart. I want her to understand who she tried to mess with. I want her to remember this moment for the rest of her sad little life. She leaned in even closer. You see this necklace? She touched the diamonds at her throat. Garrett bought it for me last month. It cost more than you'll probably make in your entire life. And tomorrow, when I wake up in his penthouse apartment, I'm going to laugh about you. About the pathetic woman who thought she could come to our party and pretend she was somebody. Denise said nothing. She just looked at Amber with an expression that was impossible to read. Nothing to say? Amber smirked. Good. Because you're not worth the breath. She raised her champagne glass and, with a flick of her wrist, poured the entire contents over Denise's head. The golden liquid splashed across Denise's face, dripped down her hair, soaked into her simple blue dress. The cold hit her like a slap. The crowd gasped. Oops! Amber put her hand over her mouth in exaggerated surprise. Clumsy me. But honestly, it's an improvement. At least now you'll have something to tell your friends about. I got champagne on me at a fancy party. It's basically the same as being invited, right? She turned to Garrett, who was watching with a strange expression on his face, something between satisfaction and nervousness. Come on, baby, Amber cooed, tucking herself under his arm. The keynote is starting soon. Let's leave the help to clean up their own mess. The crowd began to disperse, already dismissing Denise from their minds. Just another awkward incident. Just another person who didn't belong, being put in their place. The security guards grabbed Denise's arms. Ma'am, we really need you to come with us now. Denise didn't resist. She let them hold her. She stood there, dripping with champagne, her grandmother's watch now spotted with sticky residue. She watched Garrett and Amber walk toward the stage, arm in arm. Watched them smile for the photographer. Watched them pose like the perfect power couple. Wait, Denise said. The word wasn't loud, but something in her tone made the security guards freeze. Ma'am? Denise reached into her small clutch. It was a cheap thing, bought years ago when they could barely afford groceries. She had kept it for sentimental reasons. Garrett had laughed at her for that. The guards tensed. Don't do anything stupid, one of them warned. I'm not, Denise said. She pulled out a small black device. It looked like a television remote. The guards relaxed slightly. What is that, your phone? No, Denise said. It's the master override for the audiovisual system in this building. I wrote the code myself 10 years ago, when we first bought the software suite. I kept a back door, just in case. She said it so matter-of-factly that neither guard immediately processed what she meant. Ma'am, I don't know what you're talking about, but take your hands off me, Denise said. This time it wasn't a request. It was an order, delivered with the quiet authority of someone who had spent 14 years building an empire while her husband took the credit. We can't do that. Denise pressed a button. Every light in the ballroom went out. The music stopped. The murmur of conversation turned to confused exclamations in the darkness. On the stage, illuminated by nothing, Garrett and Amber stumbled, blind and disoriented. "What the hell?" Garrett shouted. "Get the lights back on! Someone fix this!" No one could, because the override codes had been changed 10 minutes ago by the only person who knew how. Denise wiped the champagne from her eyes with the back of her hand. "You might want to let go of me now," she said to the guards, "unless you want to be unemployed by the end of the sentence I'm about to speak." The guards looked at each other in the darkness. "Who are you?" one of them asked. Denise walked forward, stepping out of their grip. They didn't stop her. A single spotlight snapped on, illuminating her as she walked down the center aisle toward the stage. She was still soaking wet. Her hair was matted with champagne. Her dress was stained and ruined. But somehow, in that light, she looked more dangerous than anyone else in the room. The crowd parted for her. They didn't know why. They just did. Denise walked up the steps to the stage. She walked past Garrett, who was frozen in shock. Past Amber, whose confident smirk had been replaced by something that looked a lot like fear. She walked straight to the podium. She leaned into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "I apologize for the interruption, but before the CEO speaks, there's been a small error in tonight's program." She paused, letting the moment stretch. "It seems someone forgot to mention who actually owns this company." She pressed another button on her remote. The massive screen behind her flickered to life, and Garrett Sterling's entire world began to collapse. The screen behind Denise exploded with light. It wasn't a PowerPoint presentation. It wasn't a quarterly earnings report. It was high-definition video footage, date-stamped exactly 72 hours ago. The audio crackled through the speakers, crystal clear. "She actually thinks she's part of the team," Garrett's voice echoed through the ballroom. On screen, he was lounging on the deck of a yacht, a glass of scotch in his hand. The sun was setting behind him. He looked relaxed, arrogant, completely unaware that anyone would ever see this. Next to him, wearing a white bikini and oversized sunglasses, sat Amber. "Who, your wife?" Amber's recorded voice asked. She laughed, tossing her hair back. "God, she's so dowdy. Does she even know how to spend money? Like, I've seen her at the office. She dresses like she's going to a funeral." In the ballroom, the real Amber made a strangled sound. She grabbed Garrett's arm, her nails digging in. "Turn it off," she hissed. "Garrett, turn it off!" But Garrett couldn't move. He was staring at the screen like a man watching his own execution. On the video, he smiled at Amber's comment. "Denise is a workhorse. Always has been. She writes the code, I take the credit. That's how it's always worked." "But she's your wife," Amber said, sipping her wine. "Doesn't she, notice?" Garrett laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Amber, sweetheart, let me explain something to you. Denise is brilliant with computers, genuinely brilliant. But she's stupid with people. She trusts me. After 14 years, she still actually trusts me." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Denise stood at the podium, her face unreadable. Champagne still dripped from her hair, but she didn't wipe it away. She let it fall. She let everyone see exactly what Amber had done to her. The video continued. "So what's the plan?" Amber asked, stretching out on the yacht's cushions. "You can't stay married to her forever." "I won't have to." Garrett set down his drink and leaned forward. "The international IPO launches next month. Once the stock hits the global markets, I'm filing for divorce." "And she gets half?" Garrett smiled. The smile of a predator. "She gets half of nothing. I've been moving the intellectual property rights for the last 8 months. Shell company in the Cayman Islands. By the time Denise figures out what happened, Sterling Technologies won't own any of its core patents. I will." In the ballroom, Arthur Chen, the chairman of the board, stood up so fast his chair crashed to the ground behind him. "What the hell is this?" Arthur shouted. He was 73 years old, had survived 3 market crashes, and had never once raised his voice in a board meeting. He was shouting now. "Garrett, what the hell is this?" Garrett finally found his voice. "Arthur, this is clearly fabricated. Someone doctored this footage. This is a deep fake. It's a setup." "A setup?" Denise repeated into the microphone. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "That's interesting, because I have the metadata from the original recording. I have the GPS coordinates that place you on the Sea Spirit yacht, which you told the board was in dry dock for repairs. And I have the credit card receipts for the champagne you're drinking in that video." She pressed another button on her remote. A new image appeared on screen. Bank statements, wire transfers. A spider web of transactions flowing from Sterling Technologies to a company called Meridian Holdings LLC, registered in Georgetown, Cayman Islands. $217 million, Denise said. Transferred over 8 months. All of it from the research and development budget. All of it approved by the CEO. She paused. "My husband." The room erupted. Garrett grabbed Amber's arm and tried to pull her toward the exit. "We're leaving, now." But Denise's voice stopped him cold. "If you take one more step, Garrett, I'll play the next video." Garrett froze. "What next video?" His voice cracked. Denise tilted her head. "The one where you explained to Amber exactly why you married me in the first place. I think the board would find it illuminating." The color drained from Garrett's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Her finger hovered over the remote. "Denise?" Garrett's tone changed. Suddenly, he wasn't angry anymore. He was pleading. "Denise, honey, let's talk about this. Let's go somewhere private. Whatever you think you know, I can explain." "Explain?" Denise laughed. It was a hollow sound. "You want to explain? Okay. Explain why you told Amber that I was just the help. Explain why you denied knowing me 5 minutes ago in front of 300 people. Explain why you stood there and let your mistress pour champagne on your wife's head." Her voice rose. For the first time, real emotion broke through. "Explain why you took everything I built, everything I created, everything I sacrificed, and you handed it to a woman who thinks I should be cleaning bathrooms." The ballroom was silent. No one dared to breathe. Denise took a moment to compose herself. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. "Play the video then." Garrett's voice was barely a whisper. "If you're going to destroy me, just do it." Denise looked at him. Really looked at him. This man she had loved for 14 years. This man she had trusted. This man who had eaten ramen noodles with her while she wrote code in their tiny apartment. Who had held her hand at her grandmother's funeral. Who had promised her they would build something together. "I loved you," she said softly. The microphone picked it up. Everyone heard. "I actually loved you, Garrett. Even when I knew about the affairs. Even when I knew about the lies. I kept hoping you would change. I kept hoping the man I married was still in there somewhere." Garrett's eyes glistened. For a moment, he almost looked human. "But he's not," Denise continued. "He never was. I just couldn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it." She pressed the button. The screen changed again. This time, the footage was from inside a jewelry store. Tiffany's, based on the iconic blue boxes in the background. "Charge it to the R&D account," Garrett's voice said on the video. He was clasping a diamond necklace around Amber's neck. The same necklace she was wearing right now. "Mark it as an optical hardware prototype. The accountants won't question it." The store clerk nodded nervously. "And the earrings, sir?" "Same account, same description." Garrett kissed Amber's cheek. "Only the best for my girl." In the ballroom, every eye turned to Amber. She was frozen in place, her hand flying to her throat. The diamonds sparkled under the restored lights. Evidence. She was wearing evidence of corporate fraud around her neck. "That necklace," Denise said, "cost $847,000. The earrings were an additional $312,000. The bracelet, which I assume is the one you're wearing on your right wrist, was $523,000. Amber started to hyperventilate. All of it charged to Sterling Technologies. All of it listed as research expenses. All of it stolen from the shareholders. Arthur Chen stepped forward. His face was purple with rage. "Garrett Sterling, you are finished," Arthur said. "Do you understand me? You are finished. I'm calling the SEC first thing in the morning. I'm calling the FBI tonight." "Arthur, wait." Garrett held up his hands. "This is a misunderstanding. Denise is clearly having some kind of breakdown. She's been stressed lately. She's not thinking clearly. Whatever she's showing you, it's been manipulated." "Manipulated?" Denise laughed again. "That's your defense? The woman who wrote every line of code this company runs on manipulated evidence against herself?" She turned to the board members in the front row. "I'm going to tell you something that should have been public knowledge from the start. When Sterling Technologies was incorporated 14 years ago, Garrett and I agreed on an equity split. Would anyone like to guess what that split was?" Silence. "Arthur, you've been chairman for 12 years. What did Garrett tell you when you joined the board?" Arthur's jaw tightened. "He said it was a 50-50 partnership, equal founders." "And did you ever see the original incorporation documents?" Arthur hesitated. Number. Garrett said they were filed with his personal attorney. Standard procedure, he said. Denise nodded slowly. Standard procedure. She pressed another button. The screen displayed a scanned document. The original Articles of Incorporation for Sterling Technologies, filed with the state of Delaware 14 years ago. The camera zoomed in on the equity distribution. Garrett Christopher Sterling III, 10% non-voting Class B shares. Denise Marie Washington Sterling, 90% Class A voting shares, plus full intellectual property ownership. The ballroom exploded. "That's impossible!" someone shouted. "He lied to us for 14 years? The SEC is going to crucify him." Garrett lunged toward the podium. "That document is fake. Denise forged it. She's trying to steal my company." Two security guards stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Your company?" Denise's voice cut through the chaos. "Let me tell you about your company, Garrett. Let me tell you what you actually contributed." She held up one finger. "You made phone calls. You played golf with investors. You smiled for magazine covers. You took meetings I was too busy to attend because I was actually building the technology that made us billions." A second finger. "You managed relationships. You charmed people. You convinced them that a smooth-talking white man from Connecticut was the genius behind a groundbreaking AI algorithm." A third finger. "And you spent the money? God, did you spend the money? Yachts, cars, jewelry for your mistresses. Yes, Amber, there were others before you. Did he tell you that? You're not special. You're just the latest model." Amber let out a sob. "But the code," Denise continued. "The algorithm that runs our entire platform? The patents that are worth more than the GDP of some small countries?" She pointed to herself. "That was me. Every line, every function, every breakthrough. Me. Alone. While you were out building your image, I was building an empire." Garrett's face contorted with rage. "You were nothing when I met you," he screamed, abandoning any pretense of innocence. "You were a scholarship kid from Baltimore with bad hair and cheap clothes. I gave you access to my world. I gave you my name. Without me, you'd still be coding in some basement for minimum wage." The ballroom went dead silent. Denise smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just been handed exactly what she needed. "Thank you, Garrett," she said softly. "I was hoping you'd say something like that." She turned to the crowd. "Did everyone hear that? My husband just admitted that my only value was my coding ability. He just admitted that his contribution was his name and his connections. His world." She paused. "Would you like to tell them what else you used to say, Garrett? About people who look like me?" Garrett's face went white. "Denise, don't. Tell them what you said to Amber on the yacht. The part I haven't played yet. Tell them what you said about why you don't let me attend investor meetings." "I never—" "You said, investors get nervous when they see a black woman in charge. It's better if she stays behind the scenes. Do you remember that, Garrett? Because I do. It's on video." The gasps in the room were audible. "I never said that," Garrett whispered, but his voice had no conviction. Denise pressed the button one more time. The video played. Garrett's voice filled the room. "Look, I'm not racist. I'm just realistic. The tech world has certain expectations. Investors get nervous when they see a black woman in charge. It's just how it is. That's why Denise stays behind the scenes. It's better for the company. Better for everyone." On screen, Amber nodded along like it made perfect sense. In the ballroom, several board members were openly filming on their phones. This wasn't just corporate fraud anymore. This was a PR nuclear bomb. Denise let the silence hang for a long moment. "I built this company," she said finally. "I wrote the code. I solved the problems. I created the technology that made all of you very, very rich. And for 14 years, I let my husband take the credit because I thought that's what partners did. I thought we were a team." She looked at Garrett. "But we were never a team, were we? I was just the workhorse, the help. The invisible black woman who was too stupid with people to notice she was being robbed." She turned back to the crowd. "Not anymore." Denise straightened her spine. Champagne was drying on her face, making her skin tight and sticky. Her dress was ruined. Her hair was a mess. But somehow, in that moment, she looked more powerful than anyone else in the room. "As the majority shareholder of Sterling Technologies, I am calling an emergency board vote. Right now. Tonight." Arthur Chen stood up immediately. "I second the motion. The motion on the floor is to terminate Garrett Sterling as CEO effective immediately for gross misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, securities fraud, and embezzlement." Denise looked at the board members. "All in favor?" Every hand went up. 12 out of 12. Unanimous. All opposed? Silence. "The motion carries." Denise's voice was steady. "Garrett Sterling, you are officially terminated from Sterling Technologies. Your access to all company systems has been revoked. Your corporate credit cards have been canceled. Your equity in the company is frozen pending a full forensic audit." She paused, letting it sink in. "You are no longer the CEO of anything." Garrett stared at her. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. He looked like a fish gasping for air on a boat deck. "And Amber?" Denise turned to the blonde woman, who was now crying openly, mascara running down her cheeks. "That necklace, the earrings, the bracelet, all purchased with stolen company funds." Denise held out her hand. "Give them to me, now, or I call the police and have you arrested for possession of stolen property." Amber's hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the clasp. I didn't know. He told me he bought them. He said they were gifts." "They were gifts," Denise agreed. "Gifts he bought with money that belonged to the shareholders. That makes you an accessory." The necklace finally came undone. Amber dropped it into Denise's palm like it was on fire. Then the earrings, then the bracelet. Stripped of the diamonds, standing in a dress she couldn't afford, next to a man who had just lost everything, Amber looked exactly like what she was. A young woman who had made terrible choices and was only now realizing the consequences. "Now," Denise said, closing her fist around the jewelry. "Both of you, get out." Garrett found his voice at last. "This isn't over, Denise. I'll sue you. I'll take everything you have. I have lawyers who will bury you in litigation for the next decade." Denise smiled. "Go ahead," she said. "I'll be here, building, the way I always have been." She leaned into the microphone one last time. "While you're at it, say goodbye to the yacht. The Sea Spirit belongs to the company. I'm selling it tomorrow and donating the proceeds to a scholarship fund for underprivileged girls in STEM." She paused. "I'm calling it the Lucille Washington Foundation, after my grandmother, the woman who taught me that when people go low, you don't go high. You go so high they can't even see you anymore." Security guards moved in, flanking Garrett and Amber. "Please escort Mr. Sterling and Miss Beaumont from the premises," Denise said, "and make sure the press gets photos on their way out." As they were led toward the exit, Garrett turned back one last time. His face was twisted with hatred. "You think you've won?" he spat. "You have no idea what I'm capable of, Denise. You just started a war." Denise didn't flinch. "No, Garrett," she said. "I just finished one. You're just too stupid to realize you already lost." The doors closed behind them. Denise stood alone on the stage, surrounded by the stunned silence of 300 people who had just watched a billionaire's empire crumble in real time. She looked down at her ruined dress, at her grandmother's watch, still ticking despite the champagne. She took a breath, and then she smiled. It wasn't a victory smile. It wasn't a vengeful smile. It was the smile of a woman who had finally stopped hiding. A woman who had finally stepped out of the shadows and into the light. "Now," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom. "Does anyone know a good dry cleaner? I have a company to run." The applause started slowly. Arthur Chen was first, clapping his weathered hands together with genuine respect. Then the other board members joined in. Then the investors. Then the tech journalists, the venture capitalists, the industry leaders who had spent years shaking Garrett's hand while the real genius stood invisible in the background. By the time Denise stepped down from the podium, the entire ballroom was on its feet. But she wasn't thinking about the applause. She was thinking about Garrett's face as they dragged him out. The hatred in his eyes, the promise of war. He wasn't wrong. This wasn't over. It was only just beginning. And somewhere in the chaos of that night, as Denise finally allowed herself to be wrapped in a coat by a concerned board member, as the photographers snapped pictures and the reporters shouted questions, she received a text message on her personal phone. It was from a number she didn't recognize. The message was simple. "You shouldn't have done that. Now I'm going to destroy everything you love." starting with your precious company. Countdown begins at midnight. Denise stared at the message. Garrett wasn't going quietly, and the real battle was about to begin. Denise didn't sleep that night. She sat in the war room at Sterling Technologies headquarters, her ruined dress replaced by jeans and a sweater she kept in her office for late nights. Her hair was still damp from the quick shower she had taken in the executive bathroom.
The champagne smell was gone, but she could still feel it on her skin, like a ghost. The text message glowed on her phone screen. Countdown begins at midnight. It was now 3:47 a.m. Marcus Jerome Hayes, her best friend since childhood, and now one of the most feared corporate lawyers in Manhattan, paced behind her chair. He had driven straight from his brownstone in Harlem the moment she called, still wearing sweatpants and a Howard University hoodie. "You should have let me handle the gala," Marcus said for the third time. "We could have done this quietly, controlled. Now Garrett's cornered, and cornered animals are dangerous." "He was never going to go quietly, Marcus." Denise rubbed her temples. "You know that. I know that. The only question was whether I exposed him or he destroyed me first. And now he's threatening to destroy the company instead." Denise's phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "Tick-tock, Denise. How's the server farm in Virginia? Checked on it lately?" Her blood ran cold. "Marcus, get IT security in here, now." 20 minutes later, the war room was filled with people. Kenji Tanaka, the head of cybersecurity, was typing furiously on 3 different laptops. Victoria Chen, the CFO, who had secretly been gathering evidence against Garrett for months, was on the phone with the FBI field office. Arthur Pendleton, who hadn't slept either, stood by the window, looking like he had aged 10 years overnight. "Talk to me, Kenji," Denise commanded. Kenji's face was pale. He wasn't bluffing. There's something in the Virginia server farm. Something that shouldn't be there. "What kind of something?" "A wiper worm. Military grade. If it activates, it won't just delete our data. It will overwrite every sector 7 times. The source code, the client databases, the financial records. Everything. Gone." Victoria hung up the phone. "FBI says they need a warrant to move on Garrett. They're working on it, but it could take hours." "We don't have hours," Denise said. "When does the worm activate?" Kenji checked his screen. "There's a dead man's switch. Garrett has to enter a code every 24 hours, or it triggers automatically. Based on the logs, the last code was entered at 11:58 p.m. last night." Marcus did the math. "That gives us until 11:58 p.m. tonight." 20 hours, Denise whispered. Her phone buzzed again. "Miss me yet? Here's the deal. You're going to issue a press release saying I resigned for health reasons. You're going to unfreeze my assets. You're going to wire $50 million to an account I'll specify. And you're going to do it all by 6 p.m. today. If you don't, I let the clock run out. Your precious company becomes a smoking crater. Your choice." Denise read the message aloud. Arthur slammed his fist on the table. "Pay him. We can track the money later. We can't risk the IP." "If we pay him, he wins," Denise said quietly. "If we don't pay him, we lose everything." "Arthur," Denise looked at the old man with something like pity. "If I pay him $50 million and issue a press release saying he resigned honorably, what do you think happens next?" Arthur opened his mouth, then closed it. "He comes back for more," Marcus answered. "Blackmailers always do. You pay once, you pay forever." Denise nodded. "And more importantly, if I let him walk away clean, every woman who watched that video last night learns that men like Garrett always win. That you can steal, cheat, lie, and threaten your way out of consequences, as long as you have enough leverage." She stood up, walking to the window. "I didn't expose him just to save the company.
I exposed him because it was right. Because 14 years of silence was enough. Because my grandmother didn't raise me to back down from bullies. She turned back to the room. We're not paying him. We're going to find that worm and we're going to disarm it.
Kenji shook his head. Denise, I've been looking for 3 hours. It's buried deep in the legacy code. If we try to shut down the servers manually, the interruption might trigger it early. We're sitting on a bomb, and we can't even see the wires. Then we need to think like Garrett.
Everyone looked at her. Garrett isn't an engineer, Denise continued. He's never written the line of code in his life. He didn't create this worm. He bought it, which means someone else installed it, and that someone else might have left a trail. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'll check the access logs for the Virginia facility. See who's been there in the last 6 months. Do it. Denise's phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. She answered. You're not as smart as you think you are, Denise. Garrett's voice was slurred. He was drunk. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Everyone I know. Everyone who matters.
Do you have any idea what that feels like?
I have some idea, Denise said coldly. Your girlfriend poured champagne on my head while you pretended not to know me. That was different. You're nobody. You've always been nobody. I made you somebody. You made me invisible, Garrett. There's a difference. Same thing, he laughed bitterly. You know what I realized tonight? I should have divorced you years ago, before you got ideas, before you started thinking you were actually important. I own 90% of the company, Garrett. I've always been important. You just couldn't see it. That's another thing, his voice turned sharp. Those documents you showed everyone? They're going to be challenged. My lawyers are already working on it. Forged signatures, fraudulent incorporation. By the time we're done, you'll be the one going to prison. Denise laughed. It was genuine.
Garrett, those documents have been on file with the Delaware Secretary of State for 14 years. They've been verified by 3 different law firms. They've been audited by the SEC twice. You signed them yourself, remember? In our apartment in Seattle, the night before we filed. You didn't read them because you were too busy celebrating with champagne. Silence on the other end. You're lying. I'm not. Ask your lawyers to pull the original filings. Ask them to compare your signature with the certified copies. I'll wait. More silence. It doesn't matter, Garrett finally said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Even if the documents are real, I still have the worm. You can't stop it. And without your servers, your company is worthless. Then why are you calling me, Garrett? If you're so confident, why not just let the clock run out? Because, he hesitated. Because I'm giving you a chance. A chance to fix this, to make it right. Make it right? Denise's voice rose. You stole $200 million from shareholders. You committed securities fraud. You cheated on me for years. You let your mistress assault me in public. And you think I'm the one who needs to make things right? I'm your husband. You stopped being my husband the first time you crawled into another woman's bed. You stopped being my partner the first time you took credit for my work. You stopped being anything to me the moment you looked at 300 people and said you'd never seen me before. Her voice cracked. I loved you, Garrett. Do you understand that? I actually loved you. Despite everything. Despite the affairs, despite the lies, despite watching you parade around like you built something when all you ever did was sell what I created. I kept hoping. I kept believing. And you threw it all away for what? For Amber? For your ego? Denise, don't. Her voice hardened. Don't say my name like it means something to you. It never did. I was just the workhorse, remember? The code monkey. The invisible black woman you kept in the basement while you played CEO. That's not fair. Fair?
She laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would be you serving 20 years in federal prison. Fair would be you losing everything the way you tried to make me lose everything. Fair would be you standing in a room full of people you respect while someone pours champagne on your head and calls you nothing. She took a breath. But I'm not interested in fair, Garrett. I'm interested in finished. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to deactivate that worm. You're going to turn yourself in to the FBI, and you're going to spend the rest of your life knowing that the woman you underestimated destroyed you. Garrett's response was a harsh bark of laughter. Or what? What are you going to do, Denise? You can't find the worm. Your tech people have been looking for hours. I know because I'm watching the server logs remotely. Every search they run, every file they check, I see it. And they're nowhere close. Denise's eyes met Kenji's across the room. He nodded slightly. Maybe they're closer than you think, Denise said. They're not. I made sure of that. The guy I hired was good. Ex-NSA. He knows how to hide things even from people like you. Ex-NSA? Denise kept her voice casual. Interesting. What was his name? Garrett laughed. Nice try. I'm not giving you anything. You don't have to, because I already know. She nodded at Victoria, who held up her phone with a name on the screen. Richard Dvorak, Denise said. Former NSA contractor. Fired in 2019 for selling classified tools on the dark web. Currently living in Arlington, Virginia, about 15 minutes from our server farm. He visited the facility 6 times in the last 3 months, always using a guest pass authorized by you. Silence. How? Access logs, Garrett. Everything leaves a trail. You would know that if you understood anything about technology. She heard him breathing heavily on the other end. It doesn't matter. Dvorak can't help you. The worm is already planted. It's going to activate whether I'm in custody or not. Unless someone enters the code. Which only I know. Which only you know, Denise agreed. But here's the thing, Garrett. You're not very good at keeping secrets. You wrote that code down somewhere, didn't you? Because you knew you'd forget it. More silence. She had him. Where is it? She pressed. In your phone notes? Your email drafts? Maybe that little black notebook you keep in your desk drawer. The one you think no one knows about? You searched my office? I searched everything, Garrett. The moment I found out about Amber, I started looking. I've been preparing for this for 18 months. Did you really think I was just sitting in my lab, coding away, oblivious to everything? You knew? His voice was small now. You knew about Amber for 18 months? I knew about all of them. Amber, Kristen, the yoga instructor, the flight attendant, the intern from last summer who you swore was just a mentee. I knew everything. I was just waiting for the right moment. Why? Why wait? Because I needed evidence of the fraud, not just the affairs. Divorce would have given me freedom. This gives me justice. The line went quiet for a long moment. The notebook is in my study at the penthouse, Garrett finally said. His voice was flat, defeated. 3rd drawer on the left, under the false bottom. The code is written on the last page. Thank you, Garrett. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because... He paused. Because maybe you're right. Maybe I threw it all away. Maybe I never deserved you in the first place. You didn't. Denise's voice was quiet. But that doesn't mean I didn't love you anyway. She hung up. The room was silent. Did that just happen? Marcus asked. Did he just give us the location of the kill code? It could be a trap, Kenji warned. He could be sending us on a wild goose chase while the real code is somewhere else. It's not a trap. Denise was already moving toward the door. Garrett keeps everything important in that notebook. His passwords, his account numbers, his mistress's birthdays. He's pathologically afraid of forgetting things. It's there. Then let's send someone to get it. No. Denise grabbed her coat. I'm going myself. Denise, that's crazy. He could have people waiting. It's my marriage, Marcus. My company. My fight. She looked back at him. Besides, there's something else in that study I need to get. Something that proves the fraud goes even deeper than we thought. What are you talking about? Denise smiled grimly. Garrett mentioned the Cayman Islands transfer in that video. But what he didn't mention is that he has a second shell company, one he's been using to short sterling stock for the last 6 months. He's been betting against his own company, Marcus, manipulating the price so he could profit when it crashed. Insider trading on top of everything else? On top of everything else. And the records are in that notebook, along with the names of everyone who helped him. She opened the door. If I'm not back in 2 hours, call the FBI and send them to the penthouse. Marcus grabbed her arm. Denise, be careful. I'm always careful. She gently removed his hand. That's how I survived 14 years of marriage to a monster. The penthouse was dark when Denise arrived. She let herself in with the key she had never returned, moving through the foyer she had helped design, past the art she had helped choose, toward the study that Garrett had always claimed as his private space. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open. Garrett was sitting in the dark, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at nothing. I knew you'd come yourself, he said without turning around. You never could delegate anything important. Garrett, Denise stopped in the doorway. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the Four Seasons. I was. Then I thought, why should I spend my last night of freedom in some hotel room? This is my home. Our home. I wanted to see it one more time. Last night of freedom? He finally turned to face her. His eyes were red. He had been crying. The FBI is coming for me in the morning. I know that. You know that. Everyone knows that. He took a long drink. I just wanted one more night. Is that so wrong? Denise didn't answer. Garrett stood up slowly. He was unsteady on his feet. How much had he been drinking? I never meant for it to end like this, Denise. I know you don't believe me, but it's true. When we started the company, I really did believe we were partners. I really did love you. Then what happened? Success happened, he laughed bitterly. We got rich. We got famous. And everywhere I went, people looked at me like I was a genius, like I had built something incredible. And I started to believe it. I started to believe I deserved the credit. That you were just helping. Just helping. I know how that sounds. I know. But you have to understand, Denise. My whole life, people have told me I was special. My parents, my teachers, everyone. I was supposed to be great. I was supposed to matter. And then I met you, and you were smarter than me. You were better than me. And instead of celebrating that, He trailed off. You resented it. Yes. The word came out like a confession. I resented you. The woman I married. The woman I was supposed to love more than anyone. I resented you for being better than me. He walked toward her. That's why I cheated. Not because Amber was younger or prettier, but because with her, I could pretend. I could be the genius. I could be the success story. I could be the person I was supposed to be. You could be with someone who didn't threaten you. Yes. Denise stared at him. This man she had loved. This man who had broken her heart in ways she was still discovering. The notebook, Garrett. Where is it? He pointed to the desk. 3rd drawer, like I said. She walked past him, found the drawer, felt for the false bottom. The notebook was there, just as he promised. She flipped to the last page. A 12-digit alphanumeric code stared back at her. "That's the kill code for the worm," Garrett said. "Enter it into the Virginia server's admin terminal. It'll disarm everything." Denise photographed the page, then kept flipping through the notebook. Bank accounts, transaction records, names of co-conspirators. "You're going to give all of that to the FBI?" Garrett said. It wasn't a question.
Yes. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. Probably. Garrett nodded slowly. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. "Can I ask you something, Denise, before you go?" She paused at the door. "That night at the gala, when Amber poured the champagne on you, when I said I didn't know you," his voice cracked. "Did you hate me in that moment? Did you hate me as much as I deserve?" Denise turned to look at him one last time. "No, Garrett, I didn't hate you. I pitied you. Because you had everything. You had me, you had the company, you have a chance at a real life. And you threw it all away because your ego couldn't handle being second best at anything." She opened the door. "Goodbye, Garrett. I hope you find whatever peace you can." "Denise," she stopped. "I'm sorry." His voice was barely a whisper. "For all of it. I'm so sorry." Denise didn't turn around. "I know," she said. And then she walked out, leaving Garrett Sterling alone in the darkness of the empire he had built on lies. The worm was disarmed by 9:47 p.m. Kenji entered the kill code, and the Virginia servers went from red to green in an instant. 14 years of source code, client data, and financial records saved by 12 characters written in a dead man's notebook. The FBI arrested Garrett at 6 a.m. the next morning. He didn't resist. He didn't call his lawyers. He walked out of the penthouse in handcuffs, past the photographers and reporters who had been camped outside since midnight, and into the back of a federal vehicle without saying a word. Amber was picked up at JFK Airport 3 hours later, trying to board a flight to Paris on a ticket purchased with a canceled credit card. And Denise stood at the window of her office at Sterling Technologies, watching the sun rise over Manhattan, knowing that the hardest part was still to come. Because Garrett's arrest was just the beginning. The trial would be next, and then the world would learn exactly how deep the betrayal went. 6 months later, the Federal District Court of Lower Manhattan was packed to capacity. Denise sat in the front row behind the prosecution, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. She wore a simple black dress and her grandmother's watch. No jewelry, no designer labels. Just like the night of the gala, except this time everyone in the room knew exactly who she was. The woman who built a billion-dollar empire. The woman who brought down her own husband. The woman who refused to be invisible anymore. Garrett sat at the defense table, and the transformation was shocking. 6 months in federal custody had stripped away every trace of the charming CEO who once graced magazine covers. He had lost at least 20 pounds. His signature tan was gone, replaced by a grayish pallor that made him look 10 years older. The bespoke suits were a memory. Today, he wore a cheap gray suit that hung off his shoulders like a surrender flag. His lawyer, a shark named Vincent Calhoun, who charged $2,000 an hour, leaned over to whisper something. Garrett nodded without seeming to hear. Marcus sat next to Denise, his hand resting lightly on her arm. "You okay?" he murmured. "Ask me after the verdict." The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur of the crowd. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding." Everyone stood as the judge entered. Patricia Morrison was a 63-year-old black woman who had spent 30 years on the federal bench. She was known throughout legal circles as the Hammer for her zero-tolerance approach to white-collar crime.
Garrett's legal team had tried to get her recused. They claimed bias. They claimed conflict of interest. They filed motion after motion. Judge Morrison denied them all, with barely concealed contempt. "Be seated," she commanded, settling into her chair. Her eyes swept the courtroom, lingering for a moment on Garrett. "Mr. Calhoun, is the defense ready to proceed?" Calhoun stood. "We are, Your Honor." "Mr. Baxter?" The prosecutor, a sharp-jawed man in his 50s, rose. "The people are ready, Your Honor." "Then let's begin." Judge Morrison turned to the jury box. "Members of the jury, you've heard 3 weeks of testimony. You've seen the evidence. You've listened to the arguments. Now it's time to deliver your verdict." Denise's heart pounded against her ribs. 3 weeks of testimony. 3 weeks of watching Garrett's lawyers try to twist reality into something unrecognizable. 3 weeks of reliving the worst moments of her marriage in front of cameras and reporters. The jury foreman, a middle-aged black man who worked as a school principal in the Bronx, stood up. He held a piece of paper in his hands. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" Judge Morrison asked.
"We have, Your Honor." The silence in the courtroom was absolute. Denise could hear her own heartbeat. "On the first count, wire fraud in the first degree, how do you find?" The foreman didn't look at Garrett. He looked straight at the judge. "Guilty." A murmur rippled through the gallery. "On the second count, securities fraud, how do you find?" "Guilty." Garrett's hands, which had been clasped on the table, began to shake. "On the third count, embezzlement exceeding $100 million, how do you find?" "Guilty." Calhoun put a hand on Garrett's shoulder. Garrett shook it off. "On the fourth count, insider trading, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the fifth count, attempted destruction of corporate property through cyber attack, how do you find?" "Guilty." "On the sixth count, extortion, how do you find?" "Guilty." 6 counts. 6 guilty verdicts. 6 nails in the coffin of Garrett Sterling's life. "On the 7th and final count," Judge Morrison continued, her voice steady, "domestic cyber terrorism under the Patriot Act, how do you find?" The foreman paused. This was the big one. This was the count that carried a mandatory minimum of 20 years. "Guilty." The courtroom erupted. Reporters scrambled for their phones. Photographers snapped pictures despite the bailiff's warnings. In the gallery, someone actually cheered before being silenced by a sharp look from the judge. Garrett slumped forward, his head dropping into his hands. Judge Morrison banged her gavel 3 times. "Order! I will have order in this courtroom!" The noise subsided, but the energy remained. Electric, charged. The kind of energy that fills a room when justice, real justice, is about to be served. "Mr. Sterling, please rise." Calhoun had to help Garrett to his feet. The man who had once commanded boardrooms and dominated negotiations could barely stand. "The jury has found you guilty on all 7 counts," Judge Morrison said. "Before I pronounce sentence, do you have anything to say?" Calhoun stepped forward. "Your Honor, my client would like to address the court." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Very well, Mr. Sterling, you may speak." Garrett lifted his head. His eyes were red, but whether from tears or sleeplessness, Denise couldn't tell. He looked at the judge, then at the jury. Then, slowly, he turned to face Denise. Their eyes met. 14 years of marriage, 14 years of lies, 14 years of stolen credit and broken promises, and a love that had curdled into something toxic. "Denise," Garrett said, his voice cracking. "Mr. Sterling, address the court, not the gallery," Judge Morrison warned.
But Garrett kept looking at Denise. "I know you hate me," he said. "I know you have every right to hate me. What I did was unforgivable. The affairs, the fraud, the way I treated you at the gala.
The way I treated you for 14 years. Denise said nothing. She just watched him with that same unreadable expression. "I told myself it was justified," Garrett continued. "I told myself that I deserved the credit, that I was the one who made the company successful, that you were just the tech person, the engineer, the brain behind the curtain." He laughed bitterly. "I actually believed it. That's the pathetic part. I actually convinced myself that my charm and my connections were more valuable than your genius." He shook his head. "But the truth is, I was terrified. Every day I was terrified that someone would figure out the truth, that I was a fraud, that everything I had was built on your work, your talent, your brilliance. And instead of celebrating you, instead of being proud of my wife, I tried to make you small. I tried to make you invisible. Because if no one could see you, then maybe they wouldn't realize that I was nothing without you." His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Denise. I'm so sorry for everything. I know it doesn't matter now. I know saying sorry doesn't undo the damage. But I need you to know that somewhere, underneath all the lies and the ego and the fear, I loved you. I really did love you." Denise felt Marcus's hand tighten on her arm. "And I destroyed it," Garrett whispered. "I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me, because I couldn't handle being second best." He turned back to Judge Morrison. "Your Honor, I have no excuse. I have no defense. I did everything they said I did, and more. I deserve whatever sentence you give me." The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison studied Garrett for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable. "Mr. Sterling," she finally said, "in my 30 years on this bench, I have seen the lot of criminals. I have seen men who stole out of desperation. I have seen men who stole out of greed. I have seen men who convinced themselves that the rules didn't apply to them because they were too smart, too rich, too powerful to be caught." She leaned forward. "But I have rarely seen a man who had everything and threw it all away because he couldn't stand being outshined by his own wife." Garrett flinched. "You had a partner who built you an empire, a woman who loved you enough to stay silent while you paraded around taking credit for her work, a woman who kept your secrets and covered your mistakes and made you look good to a world that would have laughed you out of the room if they knew the truth." Her voice hardened. "And you repaid her with betrayal, with theft, with humiliation. You stood in a room full of people and denied knowing the woman who made you rich. You let your mistress assault her, and when she finally fought back, you tried to destroy everything she built." She shook her head. "That's not just criminal, Mr. Sterling. That's evil." Garrett's lawyer tried to interject. "Your Honor, my client has expressed genuine remorse." "Save it, Mr. Calhoun. I've heard enough." Judge Morrison picked up a document from her desk. "Garrett Christopher Sterling III, I hereby sentence you to 32 years in federal prison. You will serve a minimum of 25 years before you are eligible for parole. Your assets, including those hidden in offshore accounts, are hereby forfeit to the federal government. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $237 million to Sterling Technologies and its shareholders." She looked at him one last time. "You will be taken to a federal correctional facility immediately. You will have no access to computers, no access to financial instruments, and no contact with anyone from Sterling Technologies except through approved legal channels." She banged her gavel. "Court is adjourned." The marshals moved in immediately, pulling Garrett's hands behind his back. The handcuffs clicked shut with a sound that echoed through the silent courtroom. Garrett didn't resist. He didn't cry out. He just looked at Denise one more time as they led him away. "I'm sorry," he mouthed. Denise watched him go. She watched the doors close behind him. She watched the last 14 years of her life walk out of the courtroom in handcuffs. And then, finally, she let out the breath she had been holding. "It's over," Marcus said softly. "No." Denise stood up, smoothing her dress. "It's not over yet." "What do you mean? He's going to prison for 32 years. What else is there?" Denise looked toward the side door of the courtroom, where a young blonde woman was being escorted in by federal marshals. Amber Lee Beaumont. She looked nothing like the glamorous mistress who had poured champagne on Denise's head 6 months ago. No designer dress, no diamond jewelry, no perfect hair and flawless makeup. Just a scared young woman in an orange jumpsuit, her wrists shackled, her eyes red from crying. "The prosecution called her as a witness," Denise explained. "She cut a deal. Testimony in exchange for reduced charges." "And you're okay with that?" Denise watched as Amber was led to the witness stand. The younger woman kept her eyes down, refusing to look at anyone. "I'm not here for revenge, Marcus. I'm here for the truth." The prosecutor stood. "The people call Amber Lee Beaumont to the stand." Amber was sworn in, her hand trembling as she placed it on the Bible. "Miss Beaumont," the prosecutor began, "you were in a relationship with the defendant for approximately 2 years. Is that correct?" "Yes." Her voice was barely audible. "And during that time, were you aware that he was married?" Amber hesitated. Then slowly, she nodded. "I need you to answer verbally, Miss Beaumont." "Yes, I knew he was married." "Did he ever speak to you about his wife?" Amber's eyes flickered toward Denise for the first time. There was something there. Shame, maybe. Or guilt. "Yes." "What did he say?" Amber swallowed hard. He said she was nothing. He said she was just a programmer. He said she didn't matter." "Did you believe him?" Amber's voice cracked. "I wanted to believe him. He made it sound like she was this boring, frumpy woman who didn't appreciate him. He made me feel like I was saving him from a bad marriage." "And when did you realize that wasn't true?" Amber closed her eyes. "The night of the gala. When I saw her on that stage. When I realized she owned the company. When I realized everything he told me was a lie." "What happened after the gala, Miss Beaumont?" "Garrett, he changed. He got angry. Really angry. He blamed me for what happened. He said I provoked her. He said it was my fault he got exposed." Her voice broke. "He hit me. That night. In the hotel room. He hit me and told me to keep my mouth shut, or I would go to prison too." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. "He said we were going to Brazil. He had a plan. He was going to destroy the company and run away with the money. He made me help him. He made me—" She started crying. "I didn't want to. I swear I didn't want to. But I was scared. I was so scared of him." The prosecutor handed her a tissue. "Miss Beaumont, I'm going to ask you about the jewelry. The diamonds you were wearing the night of the gala. Did you know they were purchased with stolen funds?" Amber shook her head. "No, he told me he bought them. He told me he was rich. He never said anything about company money." "When did you find out the truth?" "When she took them." Amber looked at Denise again. "When Mrs. Sterling made me take them off in front of everyone. That's when I realized. Everything was stolen. Everything was a lie. I was just another prop in his show." The prosecutor nodded. "Miss Beaumont, one final question. In your time with the defendant, did he ever express any remorse for what he was doing to his wife?"
Amber was quiet for a long moment. "No," she finally said. "He laughed about it. He used to say she was too stupid to notice. He used to say black women were good at working, but not at thinking." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I should have left the first time he said something like that. I should have known what kind of man he was." She looked directly at Denise. "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything. I know you have every reason to hate me, but I'm sorry for what I did, for what I said, for pouring that champagne on you. You didn't deserve any of it." Denise met her gaze. The courtroom held its breath. "No," Denise said quietly. "I didn't." She stood up slowly. "But neither did you, Miss Beaumont. You were young. You were manipulated. You made terrible choices, but you were also a victim of a man who lied to everyone around him." Amber's eyes widened. She clearly hadn't expected this. "I don't forgive what you did," Denise continued. "I may never forgive it. But I understand that Garrett was very good at making people believe his lies. I believed them for 14 years. You only believed them for 2. She paused. "I hope you use this second chance to become someone better. Someone who doesn't need a man's validation to know her worth. Someone who lifts other women up instead of tearing them down." Amber broke down completely, sobbing into her hands. Judge Morrison, who had been watching this exchange with interest, spoke up. "Is there anything else, Mr. Baxter?" The prosecutor shook his head. "The people rest, Your Honor." "Then this portion of the proceedings is concluded." Judge Morrison looked at Amber. "Miss Beaumont, based on your cooperation with this investigation, your charges have been reduced to accessory after the fact. You will serve 18 months in a minimum security facility, followed by 3 years of probation. Do you understand?" Amber nodded, still crying. "Take her away." As the marshals led Amber out, she passed directly by Denise's seat. She stopped, just for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not destroying me." Denise looked at her. This young woman who had called her nothing, who had poured champagne on her head, who had slept with her husband for 2 years. "Destroy you," Denise said softly. "You already did that to yourself. I'm just giving you a chance to rebuild." Amber nodded, fresh tears streaming down her face, and let the marshals lead her away. The courtroom began to empty. Reporters rushed out to file their stories. Spectators murmured about what they had witnessed. The legal teams packed up their papers, but Denise stayed seated for a long moment, staring at the empty defendant's table where Garrett had sat. 32 years. He would be 84 years old when he got out. If he got out. "Denise," Marcus touched her shoulder. "It's time to go." She nodded slowly. "I spent 14 years building something with him," she said quietly. 14 years believing we were partners. 14 years trusting someone who was stealing from me the entire time. "I know." "Was I stupid, Marcus? Was I blind? Should I have seen it sooner?" Marcus knelt down beside her chair. "You weren't stupid, Dee. You were loyal. You were trusting. You saw the best in someone who didn't deserve it." He took her hand. "That's not a flaw. That's a strength. Garrett was the weak one. He was the one who couldn't handle being married to someone extraordinary." Denise felt tears pricking at her eyes for the first time since this whole nightmare began. "I loved him, Marcus. Despite everything, despite all the evidence, part of me still loved him." "I know. Does that make me pathetic?" "No," Marcus squeezed her hand. "It makes you human. It makes you someone who gave everything to a relationship and got betrayed. That's not your shame to carry. That's his." Denise took a shaky breath. "I need to get out of here." "The car's waiting outside. Victoria has champagne chilling at the office. The board wants to celebrate." Denise stood up, straightening her dress. "No champagne," she said. "Not today. Maybe not ever again." She walked toward the exit, Marcus at her side. The reporters were waiting outside, a wall of cameras and microphones and shouting voices. "Mrs. Sterling! Mrs. Sterling! How do you feel about the verdict?" "Mrs. Sterling, what's next for Sterling Technologies?" "Mrs. Sterling, do you have any comment on your husband's sentence?" Denise stopped at the top of the courthouse steps. She looked out at the sea of faces, the cameras, the microphones, the hungry eyes waiting for her to give them something they could use. "I have one comment," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the cold air. The crowd went silent. "My name is not Mrs. Sterling. It hasn't been for 6 months. My divorce was finalized the day after my husband was arrested." She paused. "My name is Denise Marie Washington. I was born in West Baltimore to a single mother and raised by a grandmother who taught me that my worth was not determined by the man I married or the name I took." Another pause. "For 14 years, I let myself be invisible. I let my husband take credit for my work because I thought that's what partners did. I stayed quiet while he paraded around as a genius because I didn't want the spotlight." Her voice strengthened. "But I'm done being invisible. I'm done letting other people write my story. From this day forward, Sterling Technologies will be renamed Washington Technologies. The products will carry my name. The patents will carry my name. And when people talk about the company I built, they will know exactly who built it." She looked directly into the cameras. "To every woman who has ever been underestimated. To every woman who has ever been told she's not enough. To every woman who has ever watched someone else take credit for her work. You are not invisible. You are not nothing. You are powerful beyond measure. And someday, if you keep fighting, the world will see it too." She turned and walked down the steps toward the waiting car. Behind her, the cameras flashed. In front of her, the future waited. And Denise Marie Washington, the woman who had been called nothing, who had been called invisible, who had been told she didn't belong, walked into that future with her head held high. 1 year later, Denise stood in the lobby of the newly renamed Washington Technologies headquarters, watching the final letter of the old Sterling sign being removed from the wall. The worker on the ladder carefully lowered the massive bronze S to the ground. Behind it, fresh paint gleamed where the new logo would go. Washington Technologies. Her name. Her legacy. Her truth. "How does it feel?" Victoria Chen asked, standing beside her with a tablet clutched to her chest. "Incomplete," Denise said honestly. Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Incomplete? You've rebuilt the company from the ground up. Stock is up 400% since the trial. Fortune magazine is calling you the most influential woman in tech. What's incomplete?" Denise touched her grandmother's watch. The leather band was worn almost through now. She really needed to replace it, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. "I spent so many years being invisible," she said quietly. "Being the ghost in the machine. Now everyone sees me, and I'm not sure I know how to handle it." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. "What is it?" Victoria asked. "It's from the Federal Bureau of Prisons." Denise's voice was tight. "Garrett is requesting a visitor." Victoria's face hardened. "You're not actually considering going." "I don't know what I'm considering." "Denise, he tried to destroy you. He tried to destroy the company. He called you nothing in front of 300 people. Why would you give him the satisfaction of seeing you?" "Maybe I need to see him." Denise put her phone away. "Maybe I need to close this chapter properly." "You closed it at the trial." "Did I?" Denise turned to face her. "I gave a speech. I changed the company name. I moved forward. But I never actually said goodbye. Not to him, not to the marriage, not to the woman I used to be." Victoria sighed. "If you're going to do this, at least take Marcus with you." "No," Denise shook her head. "This is something I need to do alone." The Federal Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland, was a 3-hour drive from Manhattan. Denise made the trip in silence, her mind churning with memories she had spent a year trying to bury. The first time Garrett kissed her, in the computer lab at MIT, surrounded by humming servers and the smell of solder. The night they got their first investor, celebrating with cheap champagne in their tiny apartment, while she wrote code on a laptop balanced on her knees. The day they went public, watching the stock ticker together, his arm around her shoulders, both of them crying with joy. All those moments, all those memories, all built on lies. The prison was exactly what she expected. Gray walls, barbed wire, the smell of industrial cleaner and despair. She signed in at the visitor's desk, submitted to a search, and was led to a small room with a single table and 2 chairs. Garrett was already waiting. He looked worse than he had at the trial. Much worse. His hair had gone completely gray. His face was gaunt, the cheekbones sharp beneath papery skin. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 12 months. But his eyes were different. There was something there that hadn't been there before. Something that almost looked like peace. "Denise!" His voice cracked when he said her name. "You came!" "I came." She sat down across from him, keeping her hands folded on the table. "Why did you want to see me?" Garrett was quiet for a long moment. He stared at his own hands, clasped together like he was praying. "I wanted to apologize," he finally said. "You already apologized. At the trial." "That wasn't an apology. That was a performance." He looked up at her. "I was still playing a role, still trying to manage how people saw me. Even when I was being sentenced to 32 years in prison, I was worried about my image." He laughed bitterly. "But you don't have an image in here, Denise. You don't have a reputation. You're just a number, a body in a cell, a name on a roster." He spread his hands. "I've had a lot of time to think, a lot of time to remember. And I realized I never actually apologized for the thing I should have apologized for most. Which is making you doubt yourself." His voice dropped. "For 14 years, I made you think you needed me. I made you think you couldn't do it alone. I made you think your genius wasn't enough without my charm and my connections and my name." His eyes glistened. "I stole your confidence, Denise. I stole your sense of self. And that's worse than the money. Worse than the affairs. Worse than anything else I did." Denise felt something crack inside her. A wall she had built over the past year. A defense she had erected against this exact moment. "Why?" she asked. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "Why did you do it? I loved you, Garrett. I would have given you anything." "Because I was terrified." The admission came out like a confession. "From the moment I met you, I knew you were smarter than me, more talented, more capable. And instead of celebrating that, I saw it as a threat." He shook his head. "My whole life I was told I was special. My parents, my teachers, everyone. Garrett Sterling III, the golden boy, the future leader, the man who would do great things." He laughed hollowly. "But deep down, I knew it was all smoke. I wasn't special. I was just good at pretending." "And then you met me." "And then I met you," he nodded. "And you were actually special, actually brilliant, actually capable of changing the world. And I couldn't handle it." "So you tried to make me small." "I tried to make you invisible, I told myself I was protecting you, that you didn't like the spotlight, that you preferred working behind the scenes. He met her eyes. But the truth is, I was protecting myself, because if people saw you, really saw you, they would realize I was a fraud. Denise stared at him. This man she had loved. This man who had broken her in ways she was still discovering.
"Do you know what the worst part is?" she said quietly. "What?" "I believed you." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I actually believed I wasn't good enough. I actually believed I needed you. After everything I accomplished, after every line of code I wrote, after every problem I solved, I still thought I was the lesser half of our partnership." "Denise, do you have any idea what that feels like?" Her voice rose. "To be a genius and feel like an imposter? To build $1 billion company and think you don't deserve credit? To look in the mirror every morning and see nothing special?" I know, Garrett's voice broke. "And I'm sorry. God, Denise, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't undo 14 years. I know. Sorry doesn't give me back the confidence you stole. I know. Sorry doesn't fix anything. I know." Tears were streaming down his face now. "I know it doesn't fix anything. I know I can never make it right. But I needed you to hear it. Not for me. For you." He reached across the table, stopping just short of touching her hands. "You are brilliant, Denise. You are extraordinary. You are everything I pretended to be and nothing I actually was. And every day for the rest of my life, I will live with the knowledge that I had the most incredible woman in the world, and I destroyed her because I was too small to appreciate her." Denise looked at his outstretched hands, at the tears on his face, at the broken shell of the man she had once loved. "I don't forgive you," she said. His hands withdrew. "I don't forgive you," she repeated. "Maybe I never will. Maybe that's something I have to live with. But I understand you now. I understand what drove you. And maybe that's enough." "That's more than I deserve." "Yes." She stood up. "It is." She walked toward the door, then stopped. "Garrett?" "Yes?" She turned back to look at him one last time. "I'm happy now. For the first time in 14 years, I'm actually happy. I wake up every morning knowing exactly who I am and what I'm worth. I run a company with my name on the building. I mentor young girls who look like me, who dream like me, who will build things I can't even imagine." She paused. "You tried to break me. You almost succeeded. But I'm still standing. And you're going to spend the next 31 years watching me soar." She opened the door. "Goodbye, Garrett. I hope you find whatever peace you're looking for." "Denise." She paused. "Thank you," he whispered, "for being better than me. For always being better than me." She didn't respond. She just walked out and closed the door behind her. The drive back to Manhattan felt different, lighter somehow. Like a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying had finally been lifted. Her phone rang. It was Marcus. "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. "It went?" She took a breath. "I think I finally let him go, Marcus. Really let him go." "Good, because I have news that's going to require your full attention." "What kind of news?" "Turn on the financial channel when you get back. Washington Technologies just became the most valuable tech company in America." Denise pulled over to the side of the road. "What? The AI platform you launched last month? It's being adopted by every major corporation in the Fortune 500. Stock price tripled overnight. You're officially worth more than Apple." She sat there in stunned silence. "Denise,
You still there?" "I'm here." Her voice was barely a whisper. I can't believe it." "Believe it. You did this. You built this. Not Garrett, not anyone else. You." She started to laugh, then to cry, then both at once, tears streaming down her face while her shoulders shook with something that felt like joy and relief and vindication all mixed together. "The board wants to throw a celebration," Marcus continued. "Big gala at the plaza. Same venue as—" "You know, the same venue." Denise wiped her eyes. "You want me to go back there? I want you to reclaim it. Walk into that room as the queen you always were. Let everyone see what the invisible woman became." Denise thought about it. The Plaza Hotel. The place where Amber had poured champagne on her head. The place where Garrett had denied knowing her name. The place where her old life had ended and her new one had begun. "Set it up," she said. "Really?" "Really. But I'm not going as Denise Sterling. I'm going as Denise Washington. And this time, everyone will know exactly who I am." 2 weeks later, she walked into the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel. The space was transformed. Gone were the Sterling Technologies banners. In their place hung massive displays bearing the Washington Technologies logo. Her logo. Her name. The crowd parted as she entered. Not because they didn't recognize her, because they did. She wore a stunning gold gown that hugged her curves. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, adorned with subtle diamonds. Her grandmother's watch, newly restored with a fresh leather band, gleamed on her wrist. She looked like a queen. Arthur Chen was the first to approach her. The old chairman had tears in his eyes. "Denise." He took her hands in his. "I am so proud of what you've accomplished. And I am so ashamed that I didn't see who you were sooner." "You see me now, Arthur. That's what matters." "I see a visionary, a leader, a woman who built an empire and had the courage to claim it." He squeezed her hands. "Your grandmother would be proud." Denise felt her throat tighten. "Thank you. That means more than you know." She made her way through the crowd, accepting congratulations from investors, board members, tech leaders. Everyone who had once ignored her now clamored for her attention. But she wasn't thinking about them. She was thinking about a young woman standing by the bar, looking uncomfortable in a simple black dress. Amber. Their eyes met across the room. Denise excused herself from the conversation she was in and walked toward her. Amber looked like she wanted to bolt. Her 18 months in prison had changed her. The fake tan was gone. The hair extensions were gone. The arrogant confidence was gone. In its place was a woman who seemed uncertain of her place in the world. "I didn't think you'd come," Denise said. "I almost didn't." Amber's voice was quiet. "Marcus reached out. He said you wanted me here. I didn't believe him at first." "Why not?" "Because I don't deserve to be here." Amber's eyes filled with tears. "After everything I did, everything I said, why would you want me anywhere near your celebration?" Denise studied her for a long moment. "Do you remember what I said at the trial? About second chances?" Amber nodded. "I meant it." Denise gestured to the room around them. "Look at all these people. A year ago, most of them thought I was nobody. A year ago, they were shaking Garrett's hand and laughing at his jokes while I stood in the background." "You were never nobody." "No, but I let them believe I was." Denise paused. "You were young, Amber. You were manipulated by a master manipulator. You made terrible choices, but you're not a terrible person." "How can you say that? I poured champagne on your head. I called you the help." "Yes, you did." Denise didn't flinch. "And I exposed your boyfriend as a fraud, got him sentenced to 32 years in prison, and made sure you served 18 months for your role in his crimes. I'd say we're even." Amber let out a surprised laugh. "That's not how I expected this conversation to go." Life is full of surprises. Denise reached into her clutch and pulled out a business card. "I started a foundation last year, the Lucille Washington Foundation. It provides scholarships and mentorship for underprivileged women pursuing careers in STEM." She held out the card. "We're looking for someone to head our outreach program. Someone who knows what it's like to make mistakes. Someone who can connect with young women who feel lost or desperate or trapped in bad situations." Amber stared at the card like it might explode. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to do something meaningful, to turn your story into something that helps others." Denise pressed the card into her hand. "What you do with it is up to you." Amber looked at the card, then at Denise, then back at the card. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because my grandmother used to say that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Denise smiled softly. "I've drunk enough poison for one lifetime. It's time to heal." Before Amber could respond, a commotion near the stage drew everyone's attention. Marcus was at the podium, tapping the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The crowd quieted. "We're here tonight to celebrate an extraordinary achievement. Washington Technologies has become the most valuable tech company in America. Our AI platform is revolutionizing industries. Our stock price has made millionaires of everyone who believed in us." Applause rippled through the room. "But we're not just here to celebrate numbers. We're here to celebrate a woman who was told she didn't belong, a woman who was told she was nobody, a woman who watched her husband take credit for her work for 14 years and never said a word." Marcus looked directly at Denise. "But when that woman finally spoke up, the whole world listened. And now, I am honored to introduce the founder, CEO, and heart and soul of Washington Technologies. My best friend since the 3rd grade. The smartest person I have ever known. Denise Marie Washington." The applause was thunderous. Denise walked to the stage, her heels clicking against the floor, her head held high. She took her place at the podium and looked out at the sea of faces. "1 year ago," she began, "I stood in this very room. I was wearing a cheap blue dress. My hair was a mess, and a woman I had never met poured champagne on my head because she thought I was the help." The room was silent. That woman was wrong about a lot of things, but she was right about one thing. I was invisible. Not because I wasn't accomplished, not because I wasn't brilliant, but because I chose to be. Because I let someone else stand in the spotlight while I did the work in the shadows. She paused. "That ends tonight." Her voice strengthened. "I am Denise Marie Washington. I grew up in West Baltimore. My mother worked double shifts as a nurse. My grandmother raised me on Social Security and love. I went to MIT on a scholarship and graduated top of my class while working 2 jobs to pay for books." She looked around the room. "I wrote the algorithm that powers every product Washington Technologies makes. I designed the AI platform that just made this company worth more than Apple. I built this empire with my own 2 hands, line by line, function by function, late night by late night." Her voice rose. "And for 14 years, I let a man take credit for all of it. Because I thought that's what love meant. Because I thought partners were supposed to sacrifice for each other. Because I believed him when he said I wasn't good with people. When he said I needed his charm and his connections. When he said our success depended on keeping me hidden." She shook her head. "I will never hide again." The applause started again, But she held up her hand. I'm not telling you this for sympathy.
I'm telling you this because there are women in this room, women watching at home, women all over the world who are hiding right now, who are letting someone else take credit for their work, who are dimming their own light so someone else can shine. She looked directly into the cameras. Stop. Stop hiding. Stop shrinking. Stop letting anyone, man or woman, tell you that you're not enough. You are enough. You have always been enough, and the world needs to see you. She took a breath. My grandmother used to tell me that when people go low, you don't go high. You go so high they can't even see you anymore. She smiled. I'm so high now that my ex-husband will spend the next 31 years looking up. The room erupted. Laughter, applause, cheers. People were on their feet. Denise let the moment wash over her. The validation she had never sought. The recognition she had always deserved. The proof that she was never, ever nobody. Then she raised her champagne glass. To second chances, she said. To new beginnings. To every woman who ever felt invisible. This is our moment. And we are just getting started. She drank. The crowd drank with her. And somewhere, in a federal prison in Maryland, a man who had once called her nothing watched the celebration on a tiny television screen and wept for everything he had lost. Later that night, long after the last guest had left, Denise stood alone on the balcony of the Plaza Hotel. The city glittered below her. Manhattan at midnight. The city that never slept. The city that had almost swallowed her whole. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Proud of you, Dee. Grandma Lucille would be doing a happy dance right now. Denise smiled and touched her grandmother's watch. I did it, Grandma, she whispered to the night. I finally went so high, they can't see me anymore. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it wasn't a sad tear. It was a release, a letting go, a final goodbye to the woman she used to be. She thought about the journey, the humiliation at the gala, the videos that exposed Garrett's crimes, the cyber attack that almost destroyed everything, the trial that sent him to prison, the year of rebuilding, of reclaiming, of becoming. It had been the hardest year of her life. It had also been the best. Because for the first time, she was living as herself. Not as Garrett's wife, not as the invisible genius, not as the woman behind the man. Just Denise. Just enough. She turned away from the city and walked back inside. Tomorrow there would be meetings and decisions and the endless work of running an empire. But tonight she was going to sleep well, because tonight she had finally won. Not against Garrett. Not against Amber. Not against the world that had tried to keep her small. Against the voice in her own head that had whispered for 14 years that she wasn't enough. That voice was silent now. And Denise Marie Washington, the woman who had been called nobody, who had been called invisible, who had been told she didn't belong, walked into the rest of her life knowing exactly who she was. A builder, a fighter, a genius, a queen, and absolutely, undeniably, magnificently enough.